So then we're set to go racing at Baku for round 8 of the 2022 season. I'm really excited, it's going to be a fantastic race, but what that does mean is we'll already be over a third of the way through the 2022 season once this weekend's race is complete. 22 races on the calendar, and they've been really exciting and great so far, but at each third of the way through the year, or what I would call a term, which we have here in the UK school system, you would have something like a parents' evening or a feedback session where your teachers would rate you on, how well you're achieving at school. And that's exactly what I'm going to do with the drivers this year. We're a third of the way through the season, so here's the Term 1 school reports for the Formula 1 2022 grid. And we're using this tier list. Pretty self-explanatory. We've got exceeding expectations, on track for expectations, room for improvement, and failing. Now, obviously, each driver, depending on their car and how well their car has performed this year, will have different sets of expectations on them. So on track and exceeding expectations are obviously brilliant. Room for improvement, pretty self-explanatory. You're going to need to have a good final two-thirds of 2022. And failing means you are really underachieving. So here's the drivers in totally random order. I'll go through them super quick because there's 20 of them. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Who do you think I get wrong? Who do you think I get right? And who is impressing or failing to impress you this season? First up, Mr. Pierre Gasly. I'm dropping him in room for improvement. Pierre is currently sat P14 in the Constructors with Yuki Tsunoda in at 12, so they've got somewhere between the 6th and 7th best car based on that, you would assume, but based on the year that he had last year and the half season he had the year before with Toro Rosso as well, you really thought that this could be a really good opportunity for Gasly to put himself in the shop window. And I think realistically, he's somewhere between on track and room for improvement, but for his own stock amongst the paddock, he really needs to have a much stronger middle and final section to 2022 if he wants to keep himself on a nice drive or find himself in a race-winning car. So room for improvement for Pierre Gasly, in my opinion. Lando Norris, I'm putting it exceeding expectation. The young Brit, I've got a little bit of bias towards McLaren, as some of you probably know. Currently P7 in the standings. He's best of the rest when you take out the 6 drivers from the 3 top teams. And you could say that's maybe on track for Lando, but when you look at how much Daniel Ricciardo is struggling, who we'll get to in a moment, I think it's fair to say that he is exceeding expectations, even if that is the 4th best car. He's been on the podium this year. He's had a fantastic few drives and some really good and consistent experience and point scoring this season as well. So somewhere between on track and exceeding expectations. And a similar one with Max Verstappen. Really difficult, I thought, to place him because I would expect him to win or be one of the top 2 drivers in the champion this season. So you would say he's on track. He's also probably left a load of points on the table through some DNFs, no fault of his own at all. So you could possibly say room for improvement when you look at his point score in total. But I would say I'm going to put him in exceeding expectations because of those circumstances around how much he's had to struggle with not being able to complete a couple of races. Up until Monaco, he'd won every race he'd finished, which that probably is a surprise, I would say, to most people. A fantastic record, a great start for him. Fair play to Max Verstappen. If I'm going to say Lando Norris is exceeding expectations, I'm going to have to say the same for Max Verstappen. Then we've got Nicholas Latifi. He's having a real struggle of it at the moment. I'm putting in him failing only for his own good because he needs to know how much he needs to improve. He's had a few costly and expensive challenges when driving that car. Alex Albon has come in and really shown him how to race on a Saturday and Sunday. They told him on the team radio to follow Alex to learn a few things in some of the practice sessions at Monaco, which is borderline embarrassing for poor Nicholas Latifi. Somewhere between room for improvement and failing, but I can't see him staying in Formula 1 much longer if he doesn't really step things up. And another one who I'm going to have to put in that category is my boy, Daniel Ricciardo. So many rumours circulating at the moment that Daniel Ricciardo is going to find himself out the door from McLaren, potentially mid-season this year, if not definitely when his contract expires, which there's still some dubious debate on whether that's the end of this year or next. He is really struggling. He's not contributing to the team totals at anywhere near the levels that Zach Brown and the team expect there. And when you look at what Lando Norris is doing, Daniel really needs to find some form very quickly. Can he do something this weekend around the streets of Baku? Let's see. Charles Leclerc, you've got to say that the boy is on track, if not exceeding expectations again. Really difficult one with him and Max. I keep swapping them around. I can't decide if they're on track or exceeding expectations. What I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to move all three of those, Lando, Charles, and Max, down to on track. They're probably exactly where I would expect them to be, actually, looking at this season. And I want to give a little bit of leeway to people like George Russell, who I'm going to put at exceeding expectations, not because he's not where the car suggests he would be in Formula One this year. I think he is currently, let's have a look, P4 in the standings, ahead of Carlos Sainz, and that's where I think he probably just ekes out Charles, Max, and Lando to that top spot, because you would think the Mercedes drivers, from what we've seen this year, would be sat in 5th and 6th comfortably in the standings. That's exactly where Lewis Hamilton is, but George Russell is borderline in a championship fight. You wouldn't really say he is. 84 points compared to 110 Sergio Perez in 3, but he's doing a lot better than I think a lot of people anticipated compared to the great Lewis Hamilton. Another one at exceeding expectations. In fact, there's two of them back to back here. Valtteri Bottas and Kevin Magnussen, for two different reasons. Kevin Magnussen back into the sport after a year away. Fantastic driver. I love Kevin Magnussen. You know that if you follow me on TikTok. But what a blistering start to the season. It has slowed down a little bit for Haas, but I don't think anyone would have expected them to be on 15 points come the start of this season. And if Mick Schumacher hadn't had a couple of issues and challenges when he was on the brink of scoring points, Haas could be somewhere in the mid to high 20s in terms of championship points so far this season. All 15 scored by K-Mag so far. Absolutely brilliant. Really needs to kick on now though and keep that run of form going and find some more points, because otherwise I think they're going to start looking behind their shoulders at teams coming up behind them. And then Valtteri Bottas leaving Mercedes, and who would have thought that he would be, let's have a look, 10 points behind Lewis Hamilton after 7 rounds of the 2022 season. No one saw that coming. What a fantastic experience and great drive that he's had so far this season. And yeah, great work from BB. Over then to Carlos Sainz. I'm going to say room for improvement. You've got to say in his second year at Ferrari, you would have expected a little bit more from him. He's somewhere between that sort of on track and room for improvement, but the fact that he has got George Russell splitting him from the next Red Bull up the road in terms of the driver's standings at the moment, he really needs to get a move on. A couple of costly mistakes in races this season, not fantastic in qualifying, but not too far off being on track. I think Ferrari obviously want a real stab at the World Drivers' Championship with Charles, and to really maximise the points that they get in for the constructors to get themselves back up to either number 1 or 2 spot, and Carlos just isn't quite delivering on that promise at the moment. So a little bit of room for improvement, but I would say nowhere near as much as Pierre Gasly, who is alongside him there. Then you've got Esteban Ocon, who for me is somewhere between, again, exceeding expectations and on track. The Alpine has sort of promised a little bit for a couple of seasons now. Renault were really, really excited about the changes they were making, but nothing's really materialised this season so far. They had a couple of nice podiums and a win, obviously, last year. So I would say both him and Esteban are on track for where they need to be. They are 9th and 13th in the constructors at the moment, which would suggest they're somewhere around the 5th, 6th, 7th best team. And that's pretty much about where they are. You could maybe argue that Esteban Ocon, with 30 points already this season, is perhaps exceeding expectations more so than what Fernando Alonso is delivering. But I'm going to say they're both on track. Don't see too much of them on the TV at the minute, and yeah, it's not been too good. Zhou Guanyu, difficult one. I thought, at the start of the season's point scoring, you would say in his debut race, exceeding expectations. Is he on track for a rookie? When you look at what other drivers have done in their rookie year or even following year, you look at Nicholas Latifi at the minute, you would say, he's doing a much better job than those guys did. But I would still argue room for improvement. Only 1 point, no points scored since that debut race, if I'm correct. I'll just double check the standing. Yeah, still on that 1 point. So room for improvement, some steady driving, some nice experience for him over this first term, over these first 7 races. But real big chance now that he's going to need to maximise what he can do for the rest of the season. Exceeding expectations, Alex Albon. I was quite critical of Alexander Albon when he was at Red Bull, and also very critical of his fans who were calling for him to come back into that Red Bull seat I thought Perez was by far the best choice and has delivered, in my opinion. So I sort of wrote off Alex Albon, but fair play to him. He's doing an absolutely fantastic job. What he did at Australia was amazing. And when you consider how long it took George to get points for Williams, fair play to Alex. I'm going to put both Aston Martin boys on room for improvement. Not a great start to the season from Aston Martin. They've been promising so much for so long. There's an excited fan base who want them to do well, and they're just not delivering, are they, at the moment? So very difficult for them. You would argue maybe Seb is a little bit more on track than Lance Stroll, but Seb himself is only on 5 points. If we triple that and assume that he ends on 15 come the end of the season, not a great return for the Aston Martin guys. Lance, it would be harsh to say he's failing considering where Seb is, but considering Seb missed a couple of races and he's behind his teammate, maybe you could say Lance Stroll is failing, so let's actually drop him down a peg. Sergio Perez, I'm going to say on track, possibly exceeding expectations. Fantastic win, obviously, at Monaco. What's the lad on now? He's on 110 points. You know what? I'm going to say he's exceeding expectations. He's only 15 back from Max Verstappen. Yeah, definitely exceeding expectations. I don't know what I was thinking there. Great work from him. Lewis Hamilton, by his standards, you would say he is failing. But realistically, it's going to be room for improvement, isn't it? Maybe it's British bias, but he's 6th in the standings in the 3rd best car. George is obviously 4th, which puts him in exceeding expectations. So he's probably on track, but realistically from the tramp, he needs to be doing a lot more. So room for improvement for Lewis Hamilton. Mick Schumacher, unfortunately, I'm going to have to put in the failing category. When is this lad going to score some points? He's not really showing the world that he can deliver on. I mean, it would be harsh to compare him to his dad, of course, but that Schumacher name carries so much weight with it. Maybe that is too much for him at the moment, but he should be doing a lot better at risk of losing his drive. And then Yuki Tsunoda, I would say exceeding to on track. What's Yuki on now? Yuki has scored 11 points, which is 5 more than Pierre Gasly. So he's definitely on track. I would say if Gasly is under room for improvement, you wouldn't really say he's exceeding expectations. I feel like Gasly's probably dipped off as Yuki's started to find a little bit of form. So somewhere between the two. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think this is fair? Do you think anyone needs to move around? Who is your surprise package for the season? Who's letting you down the most? Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.